and welcome back to Steps to Lead podcast. My name is Rochelle, and this second season is about your journey to God, their inspiration story. And today I have another person to share their journey to God. So, thank you, Alicia, for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Rochelle.
So, Alicia, we are going to ask you, I'm just going to ask you, who was Alicia before God, and who is Alicia after God?
It's a very interesting question. Um, as far as I can remember, I've always known God. I've always known that He existed. Um, so before it is, God has always been there. He's always been here, but the intensity or the understanding of God is more intense and more clear now as an adult because I came into the church when I was into the Seventh Adventist Church specifically when I was 10 years old. And um, it's interesting how we came into the church. It was during the holiday, the long summer holiday, and my sister and I, we were playing outside. We would have finished our chores, and unlike our children now, we didn't have devices and lots of things to capture our attention back then, probably besides television. And which child would sit and watch television? Not very many, and certainly not us. So we opted to play outside, and our area of play was just our front yard. We lived on a main road, and we could only play in the front yard. We extended the front yard as children to the sidewalk. So what we would do, there's a embankment within the yard. We would get up on that, climb on the wall, which was a fairly low wall, but then it was a long drop into the road, and we will do that. Jump on the wall, drop onto the sidewalk, run around, and do it again. And one day, incidentally, we jumped on a lady. This lady was Seventh Adventist, and she didn't get vexed. She didn't respond in anger or anything, and she didn't threaten us like we were anticipating, to tell our great grandmother. We were actually living with our great grandmother at the time because my mother had migrated to Canada for work, and she didn't tell anyone. What she said she was going to do is she was going to talk to my great grandmother when she came home to get us to go to VBS. And that is where our journey started. I was about 10. But we didn't become members of that church, the Ephesus Seventh Adventist Church, until about 2 years after my mom returned to Barbados. We told her about the experience because it was really a wonderful experience. We'd never heard about Seventh Day Adventists before. Sabbath keeping, it was really, really strange, but we learned all these things. The leaders, the teachers, the children, it was real fascinating to us. We learned the craft and interacted with some really, really good people, and then they fed us. So we enjoyed the whole VBS experience, and then there was graduation after that, and we got to keep our craft that we took home and were so proud of for many years. Then when my mom came back to Barbados about 2 years after, we told her we wanted to go back there. Because of course, as children, have an experience like that, you wanted it again. Sabbath school, we didn't get to go to Sabbath school after that. And when she came back and she attended, like we requested, she became a member of the church. Right away, she got caught in the doctrines, in the people, in the whole lifestyle. And she started to change her whole life. Subsequent to that, she got baptized, and she got us baptized also, enrolled in baptism class, and we got baptized. So at 12 years old, I was baptized and enrolled into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And you could say that's where my journey began. But like all journeys, sometimes they take a wrong turn, they take a turn, and you end up on the wrong path, you end up in the wrong place. Uh, but we continued in the church. I actually started working from the age of 13. One of the members said, you know, you really articulate, you like to talk. And she asked my mom if I can go on the platform. And from there, I've been involved in different ministries, youth ministries specifically, etc. And my faith grew to the point when I was about 15. And, you know, most young persons, we went to public school. Up to that time, we went to a public school. And you had the influences there that could have taken you to fetch, etc. But we were strictly a Christian family. And I determined that I wasn't interested when my parents were talking about those things. I wasn't interested in those things. So I knew from 15 that I was going to continue for myself to be a Seventh-day Adventist. But that took a little more than that determination that particular day. Now, one of our challenges was that my mother in this big family was the only person who was Seventh Adventist. So the influence from other family members also was still pretty great. And without knowing, you know, you saw those things, persons still brought us jewelry, even though they knew we were, you know, Seventh Adventist. So you still had it. So we are still negotiating, even as children, our own relationship. And I think that's why that came up at that time.
And you
Yes,
see how
yes,
God uses
indeed,
unconventional ways to reach his
indeed.
people.
Yes, yes.
How did you find growing up the attitude of family, friends, and peers towards you deciding to follow God at that young age?
There were some of our relatives, and like anything that you do, there is a person is a new thing, and there were some relatives who, because we were Anglican, we came up and we were known and understood to be Anglican, but we weren't attending church. But here it was, there were persons who, why some Adventists? I remember there were persons who were outspoken about it. Some persons, some others, you know, would have respected that. That's what my mother wanted. We were doing, we were all right. But there's some persons, why some Adventists? It was, you know, why didn't go to a normal church? Because a lot of people still don't understand Seventh-day Adventism. And certainly at that time, we were the first Seventh-day Adventist in our family, that circle of family. So it would have been new. And I guess anything new and uncertain and obviously strange would bring discussion and some opposition. But I like that my mother was steadfast and she didn't outwardly defend it, but she defended her choice by being faithful and committed to going to church and making sure that her children, even if no one else around us went to church, that her children attended and participated in church.
And
So I guess
that
that's how
is,
we dealt with that.
mm, yes, and that is what a lot of persons are missing. You don't have anyone to encourage them to stay in church Sunday or Saturday. They do not really have peers around their age or family who will just encourage their attending church or any group that uh, is spiritual of God, and they really don't want to encourage you. Want a different, they want you to be just like them. So it was very good that your mother stand firm and say, Me, what they said, Dorothy, me and my house will serve the Lord. So that was very
No,
good.
that was very good. And it was good that that was our initial experience. But later in life, um, just after it was about 15, just around that same time that I started to concrete and rationalize my relationship, we went to live with my dad. My dad was not Seventh Adventist, very entrenched in Anglicanism, but he did not attend church. And of course, we didn't attend church with him on occasion or any. And that would have been his closest experience to while living with children, his children who were Seventh Adventists, his closest experience. And I remember there were times initially, my father, this is my house now, and that you don't do that. But my sister, who was obviously stronger in faith than I, she was the one who stood up. I remember we'd be going to church. My father would call back. There are things in here to do. There are things to be done. So after we learned do the chores before Sabbath came, so that he's not calling us back to do anything. What he learned was do not give us bus fare so that we are not looking to attend church. My sister then determined that we were going to walk to church. We were going to walk to church for about 30 to 45 minutes. That's the distance away from us church was. And we did it for a while until a brother came and took us to church. But then eventually we saw my father turning around. He didn't come to attend, but he came to respect that these girls are sticking to their guns. They know what they're about because we did have conversations. And here was where we were learning about our faith and our doctrines. And we were sort of teaching him at the same time. He would play the devil's advocate, but we
Yeah.
would come through to the point where he would call me Pastor Moses jokingly. And I'm glad that he had the experience through us. We didn't know anything about family worship on Friday nights. And somebody, a friend of ours, we started going to the Adventist secondary school by now, and a friend of ours gave us some Sandy Patty and Laurel tapes. Remember those old tapes back then, those little things? They gave us some of those, and we would sing. That was our worship. Learn the songs and sing along
Mm.
with them, etc. And my father was like, "What's this? What are you doing?" This was such a strange thing to him. Young girls can go wherever they want. He knew that we were responsible, but we chose to stay home on Friday night and listen to this music, and we chose to go to church. And he wouldn't say it to us, but there are persons who would say to us, your dad is proud of you. And I'm glad that he got through us to have that experience. Even when we joined Pathfinders, my father was supportive. We joined the choir back then called the Royal Diadems, which was a large part of our lives. And incidentally, the Royal Diadems, the choir became a part of our family's lives. And he appreciated that very much. And while he didn't come to church with us, he would come to concerts. So that it shows that there's so many ways. Look at how we were witnessed to through that incident, and he was witnessed to through our relationship and coming to God.
As it is, sometimes our actions, our character, our words will be the only Bible that a lot will see. So your father
Certainly.
saw the character of God through you and your sister, and it ministered to him. Even if he did not understand at that point, but he was being ministered to. And as children, the Lord, it says the children will lead them.
And
So you and your sister was doing a wonderful thing in his life.
Which shows, Rochelle, that there is a great work that can be done in ministry by children.
Yes.
We should
Yes.
always, include children in ministry, because they too, we might be thinking, oh, they're just children, they don't have great faith or whatever, but children, they have their place in ministry.
Yeah, because the Lord said, come to him as a child. So if you see how children attack certain situations, they leave you thinking and awe that they could even think about some of the things that we cannot even work out as a adult,
I,
right?
I
So,
think, and I think people like to see children in ministry. I remember our Pathfinder days, going out into the community and witnessing, especially around what we call in gathering time, where we allow persons the opportunity to share monetarily and give up their gifts to be able to
mhm.
help others that they may not reach, but that we are in contact with. And those experiences were profound for us, but I think the community, in the way that they responded and the way that they give, they love to see pathfinders in the uniform and the children out there, and we totally enjoy that experiences. So I think we should have children lead more, because people like to see children in ministry, and that's a way of them as children concreting their faith also.
Yes, yes. You were a minister even before you know that you will be a minister later in life.
Seems that way. Seems that way. We are all ministers. As I always say, we all have a ministry.
Yes. Now we are going down in your life now. As you were saying earlier, different things happen that will, they change the dynamic of your life and your your commitment to God. So what happened or what changed in your relationship or what caused you to recognize that something was missing in your life?
Okay. So I can't say that there was one specific thing that changed, but in reflection, it would have been a series of things over time. And I would tell you that's how the enemy works. Sometimes he's not going to come very obvious. He's going to do little things that, wear you down, make you tired, make you weary. And that's why the word tell you, don't get weary in doing good. When we do get weary in doing good, we sort of slacken up and lighten up on what fuels our faith and our walk. And there were some things that I would not, as I rationalized and as I became an adult, I started working because I needed to work to help my family. So I sort of pushed aside um, some of my dreams, some of the things I wanted to do, my talent. In our discussion, I would have told you that I wanted early to be a teacher, and then I was told no, I didn't have the patience. And then I wanted to go into broadcast very early. You would see me around with my microphone. So what's going on here? Say somebody in the house spilled something, and I'll have my microphone, and I'll go like, so what really happened here? Tell us what happened here, and it would be a joke. It would be, funny and stuff. But a relative of mine back then told me, and I believed her, that you didn't have the face. She simply said you were ugly for television, and showed me some of the persons who worked in television, and you saw very pretty women working in television. And I suppose that said to me back then, this little very dark girl with this very wild hair, you aren't fit. And I forgot that and went on. And I remember, having a conversation with my mother. You need to be able to work. You need to be able to help support the family. It was just her, more or less. and you needed to find something that can help support. And that I did. And I continued in that job. But then I started to rationalize the change. I got the opportunity to go into teaching. And even though I knew it was temporary, the possibility was there that it may have turned out to be permanent. So that is why I was hoping and praying for that it became a permanent position. It didn't become a permanent position. I was not thinking about it being not continuing, even though that's the possibility that it would not have been permanent. And I can tell
I,
you, I
wa-
was very, very,
I want to ask a question. When your family, your relative, told you what she thought was TV acceptable and told you that you did not have what they said you look for TV. Yes, you say you are agreed, so you switch gears. What did those words really meant to you when you heard your relative tell you those, well, you would say hurtful words?
they're hurtful words, but um, Caribbean children, we take things with a pinch of salt, and we continue life as
Yeah,
usual.
keep
And
breathing.
then
Yeah,
when she showed me that, look, they're usually these very, what we call society called pretty women with beautiful long hair, etc. And I remember one had an accent, it was like an English accent and stuff. I wasn't anywhere near there. This teenager, my body didn't get it together as yet. The pimples and stuff, I didn't have many, but they were there. And the little ugly duckling stage of our lives, I saw and rationalized, according to her, that okay, that's not for me. These are the things that you need, and I don't have them.
yeah,
So it was continue. And back then, persons thought that working in an office was a job. You know, you worked either your lawyer, doctor, bank manager, and if you weren't those things, those traditional jobs, you got a job in an office, and that helped your family. The idea was, unlike how I talk to my own children now about how your gifts and the things that you like to do can fuel your purpose and your vocation or your job or what you do, what you bring to your society, etc. Um, the thing was, this was a job. This is what a job was, an easy job. Work on getting the CXCs, etc., to get that job so that you can get that and help your family. The main purpose was earning money to help your family back then. So you didn't think about, those dreams and,
yeah.
get rid of those
And
whole ideas and ideals.
and we have to be careful. There are not a lot of children who are strong minded to keep going for their dreams. They
That's true.
hearing words of like that will break their spirit, break their heart, and
Yeah,
the road that they were going, the positive word um
yeah.
road they were going, because of that one adjective that's negative, they
Mm-hmm.
will turn out to be a totally different person than you will have known, and it will not be anything positive or good. So
Yes.
parents, especially family, start speaking to your loved ones, the aspect, especially the children, in a negative light. Encourage them and let them hear positive words. If they have to change something, you can You could correct them in love. You
Mhm.
could suggest things in love. You can show things in love. But if you are going to come with a negative attitude and words, that do not help anyone. That don't fuel
Right.
anyone. You just run them away from you. So it's so good that you, although you heard, as you say in Caribbean, we will hear a word, and sometimes yes, sometimes we are hurt to the point that we can't do anything. But mostly we keep driving
Keep,
and doing
yes,
whatever we have to
it
do.
is true.
So
That's the
eh,
resilience of the Caribbean child.
yeah, yeah, and you have to. You have to.
You may not be negative, but not helping children to negotiate and figure out who they are and what their gifts are and how they can use those gifts may also serve the purpose of them not following their purpose or not using their gift as their vocation or the way that they can make money and go far in that thing. So it is speaking positive to them and then helping them to find what it is that is in them or the skills that we're giving to them or or finding ways for them to be able to use that thing to be able to fuel their purpose more or less.
Yes, very true, very true. So if continue when you are going through these different changes in your life.
So I was looking at changing positions. Remember, the first company, it had merged, and we were given the opportunity to take the severance package, which I did, and go into teaching, which I always wanted to do. And I saw that as my opportunity to do the first thing that I wanted to do, which was teaching. And you remember I was discouraged from doing that because I was told I didn't have the patience. But here I was proving that I did have the patience. And that came to an unexpected end. I was hoping in faith and praying that it continued. And here I was, got a letter. It was not going to continue into the next term. I was, for the first time in a long time, I was totally crushed because here I wasn't depending really on anyone to help me. I was depending on the merit of what I would have done and God helping me, my faith, praying and trusting that He's not gonna disappoint me and trusting that here I was, I needed these funds and He knows that I needed the salary to be able to take care of my family. But here it was, I'm losing my job with no prospect. I did not try to find another job because my faith and everything. Some person listening may say it's foolish faith. But at this point in time, 28, 29, that was where I was at the time. And without going into much detail, my faith took a serious nosedive. Here was trusting in God. Some other things that happened in that job, and I stood up. I thought that I was standing up for faith. I was standing up for God. I was standing up for my religion. I was standing up for women. And I recall when I went home, the person who helped me to get the job said to me, "You know how to get back your job." And that didn't mean, when he called, that did not mean me coming to an interview or having to grovel or beg or do something, make something right that I had made wrong. This was harassment, and I had no real defense. He was a powerful person. He's passed on now, but he was a powerful person, and he said to me, "If you want your job, you know where to find my house. I can give you directions to find my house." And I determined no, and he would always call and harass me. But the only person who started to defend me in this position was my mother, because she would say, leave the child alone, stop calling here. And I, up to that time, because I would have been doing courses, childcare courses, even though I worked in an insurance and office setting, and I did those courses. I started snuck in some courses. I wanted to go into childcare back then. I would not have told you that I wanted to do social work. And because it's a day release, my relative again told me, no, don't do that because you need your job. You're going to have to leave your job to be able to do this full time and do a day relief. Keep your job. And so I forgot about social work back then. But here I was doing my thing in teaching and lost that job. But in between there, I had done some courses along with my counseling courses to keep up. Because one of my tutors, he was really disappointed when I told him that I could not go on. And he said, well, keep doing your courses and keep your training and skills up, because you have the knack for this. And in doing those courses, I knew I could, where I could have fit in working with children here on the island. And this person who told me I knew how I can get back my job was affiliated with many of those areas. And I remember going to one of my interviews, or he said to me, you will never get, you're too heady, you too like I think too highly of myself, you will never get a job in childcare in Barbados as long as I live. And he meant it, and he followed through on it. I remember I went to an interview, and he was one of the persons interviewing. It was a panel, and he destroyed me. He destroyed me in that interview. He talked about the fact that I had no children of my own. I was young. Um, I wore polished nails. I took care of my nails at that time. You know, it's not all about that. And he took everything about me. How are you going to you've not seen a star pitch. How are you going to be taking care of children? Something happened in the night and you have to break up your night's rest. I'm sure you've never broken up a night's rest for anybody before. How are you going to break up your night's rest to take care of a child and make sure that one of these children got to the hospital or whatever? And um, there and then I knew I'm not gonna get anywhere with this. And I was afraid. I was now very timid and very unsure. And there's where the
This
nose dive. The never was. You know, when you're diving, sometimes there might be something to bring you back up. That getting a new job was the thing to bring me back up. Being disappointed again in that was the thing that brought me really, really
and
down.
this shows you the unequalness in work in the workplace. Yes, they're working hard to have equal rights in the workplace for women and men, but still, I could say women are still disadvantaged. It's very bad, and it's a lot of these are issues that women go through a lot every day. So to know that you went through this, I know is so bad, and I believe in talking about it, talking out about it, standing. And for me, I love calling names. I know you won't call names now, but I believe in calling names, especially because there are a lot of persons who will believe, oh, never, this person would never do this or they would never do that. And sometimes the same person that you are depending on is stopping you yourself to do something, but they're doing it in the background and you do not know, but still you are defending them, but you never know. So I believe in airing out a lot of things, and I think that that is a problem that humans have. We love to be so secretive,
It's
and
not so
that
much as
secretive.
secretive as that, we got to remember rights and our responsibility as much as we have
Yes.
freedom of speech. When you were talking earlier about what's happening in workplace, the inequality, women and men,
Mhm.
I think it comes out of the ignorance. For me, it came out of the ignorance of being able to identify workplace harassment and then knowing what channels and what to
Yeah.
do so that it did not continue or it did not happen to someone else. So ignorance, I want for young women and males too to
Yeah.
understand their rights and not be ignorant of their rights, to be able to work freely, unharassed, etc. And even though I was out of a job after that, he still came after me. Still came after me. I was not in the workplace to come back or no, to come to him and do what he wanted to do. I remember telling him, "You will now or never have me," and that is what brought whole the whole situation. Um, and then another thing, you were talking about secrecy, not calling names. No, he is passed, but even if,
Hmm.
especially even if he were alive, and we could have been, I'm thinking of suing for not harassment, for um the word was coming to my mind, and while I was writing here, because I want to remind myself to talk about rights, we can be sued for libel, where we call a name, etc., and we don't know how far and how the weight, and that's another thing that creates fear of who the person is, etc., and what they can do. But I'm thinking that when we have the persons around us, and we're going off our topic here, but it's important to still be cognizant of the importance of knowing your rights and where to go to be able to access your rights and be helped with them,
Yeah.
because our young people should not be harassed, or women should not be harassed, even men are harassed, but know what
Yeah.
channels to take. And companies too and organizations need to have policies in place to deal with harassment and to deal with these things, so
Yeah.
that I knew back then where I can get recourse. I didn't even, what I knew, some it was wrong, but what was it called? I can tell you that I knew back then, and the ignorance is what created more fear for me as a young person. So I didn't bother to go into childcare at all after that, and I realized, look, he was he was being frank and honest, and it was not just a an empty threat, it was a real threat, because that interview proved to me that I was up against something bigger than myself. And at that time, because my faith in God had wavered and had gone so far down, I didn't even call or trust in God to help me through even that situation. I just accepted it as fate. I felt at that time that I was not going to get another job. I was not going to work again. I was going to have to disappoint my family, and I was going to live in poverty. And for a while, um, I remember I hadn't been dependent for years, and here it was, now I'm dependent. Where things gonna come from? Dependent on persons who look to me um, for income, for that income, and that is when I got the enemy. He knows where you're at. He knew that my face had taken a nosedive, and he is gonna come when you open leave your face open, as I did back then. He finds things to put in. And that's when I got pregnant with my son at 29, going on to 30. He's now going to be, in a few months, he's going to be 18. And that is as long as it took, excuse me, oh, sorry, for me to find my way and find my faith and find my strength. Because at, along that path is where I started trying to find myself, find where I should be, find back my footing, gain back my faith. It was not, nothing was coming as I'd expected. Nothing was happening as I was expected. Of course, now having a child in church out of wedlock, it changes how people perceive you and how people interact with you, because I appreciated the persons who were disappointed. Here was a person who had influence on young people, who had done so much in church. You think that she'd know better and that she'd do better. So, how did you come to this? I remember it was walking downstairs, my belly had started to show, and I remember the elders had come together when they found out. They prayed for me, and the first elder said to me, this is the time, especially for that child, that you need to stay close to God and stay close to your people. But it didn't feel that way when I actually interacted with other persons. And I sort of get why. I remember this woman said, looked at me, said, your mother raised you like that? Your mother, your mother. And my mother was very disappointed. My sister was disappointed. Everybody showed the disappointment. There's some persons who tried not to show it, but it showed, and I felt it. I remember going and sitting in church where I would usually sit, and persons who would usually sit in that area chose other places to sit. And I'd be sitting there hoping to, catch the eye of somebody else, excuse me, or whatever, and see a smile or whatever. But there were those who tried to be supportive and tried to be caring and stuff, but then there was that element. And remember, at this time, my faith was weak. My faith was not where it was. And I'm here dealing with this situation now, the shame, the where how did I get myself in this? I'm still not even working, how I'm gonna feed myself and my family and this child. There was a lot on me.
And that shows you the difference in some churches. Like you, I had my daughter out of wedlock, but I could see my church gather around me closer. They pray for me. It's not that the church is condoning what happened, but they showed their love in love. They showed love and correct you in the right way in love.
I hope I didn't give the impression that the whole church, the whole congregation
Right,
turned,
right,
turned it back on me, because there were persons who were extremely caring and
right.
enveloping at that time. But then it was where I was at. I believe is where my faith was at the time. And the feeling and the weight that I carried at the time,
Yeah,
that made those moments, those not so good moments,
yeah.
even more
Because it will
profound.
blame you. Yeah, it will
Yeah,
blame
even
you,
more
and you will think
profound at
everything bad. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I remember before, there were times persons would call on me to do a skit, to do different things, to participate in different things, and at short notice. One particular person I remember, she would always call to get my input and help with programming. I remember stepping through the door. She was right there, and she turned her face up and looked away. And that was the last day that I was going to come into that church. That was the last day during that pregnancy that I was going to come there, because I couldn't handle that mentally. I could not handle that anymore. And I had determined that I was going to stay away. And that I did. And my son was born. Incidentally, there were persons, the church did make sure that I had some of these things that I needed. So they did not totally abandon me. And even when the day I went into the hospital, there were persons, I'm going to single out this one name. You said you called name Mariam Bulling. her birthday was going to be, she wanted him to wait for the next day. He's born the day before her birthday. She wanted him to wait for the next day. And some of these persons found themselves at the hospital. And the nurse came, I remember the nurse came in to the thing ever so often and say, I didn't say, you're telling your people that you are a hotel, your people sick that you are a hotel, tell them that this is a hospital. As though I was calling people. But persons were coming and asking if the Moses baby was born, if baby Moses was born. And but the experience was great at the hospital, at the QEH. Kudos to the doctors and nurses and the student doctors. I remember they asked me if I can have if for student doctors to be there, and I didn't mind at all. Here I was, I didn't mind at all. And I remember the main doctor was he'd asked um, find the apex, and I pulled the thing down and went. It was lost, and everybody laughs, and the whole experience was it was something else. They'll rub my back, they'll rub my hand, they'll. It was a real lovely experience, and then to know that there were persons there waiting until this baby was born, and there were persons there when he came. It was like a swarm of persons, and they were mainly church people who came. So
Mhm.
I cannot say that the love was not there. It's just that where I was at the time, I was not feeling it. I was not, because I was so clouded by my
Mhm.
own judgment, my own disappointment, my own, the weight and the worry of the whole situation. And that is why I would tell other young people, take your time on that. Take your time in preparing yourself. Don't rush into relationships. Don't, especially if you are at a low point in your life. That is when you call on God or look to other people. But that's not the time that you pull closer to a boyfriend or a girlfriend if they aren't the person who are leading you to God. If they are the person who's focusing, helping you to focus your life. Because we were in basically the same situation. How are we helping each other? We are two blind people, two very blind people here, rationalizing so much. We were at a turning point in both our lives, but we thought we were helping each other, and we really weren't. We really weren't helping each other.
We will hear some more from Alicia after this brief message.
But God is good. I had a beautiful little boy. And even while I was pregnant, coming down to the end of my pregnancy, I got a job. I got a job with my belly and everything, working in a clinic where I can get antenatal care. The nurses there, they were really helpful. If we got time, I'll share that story. When I got there, I was helping in the account section, and I had found some orders in a drawer to be done, and I worked on them feverishly because I was learning on them too, and I worked on them. And one of the nurses, she came up and she found out that I'd worked on her order, and some of the other persons, they came and they thanked me, etc. And the nurse said, this child is going to be my godchild. And she made sure that I got the best care downstairs, etc. in the clinic. He had so many godparents in that clinic. Somebody made sure that they brought me cuckoo every once in a while. Somebody brought me juice every once in a while just to say thank you. And God helped me because I'm here now preparing for a child to come, and the salary is not a lot, and it's a temporary job again. So I needed to save, and I needed to put away his things and prepare for him coming. So I didn't have a lot of money, but here it was that God was taking care of me. And looking back, he sent people and situations, even that situation of getting a job near home and getting a job in a clinic to be able to take care of myself. And I didn't have to ask to leave work to go to be cared for. I was right there at work where I could be cared for. Isn't God good? Isn't God good? He orchestrates the best situation. Then after that, we went along, but my face still had not been repaired. My son had ADHD, and if we know how that affects behavior, we would know that this is not a child who sat in church. Church was tiresome with a child who had behavioral um, deficits as along with the fact he could hyperactivity. So his was more hyperactivity. He didn't sit still. He was always up and about. It was hard first thing to get him ready for church, and then at church it was an ordeal. I was always going. My brain was always going. I was always tired, and I still had to work. By this time, I had gotten a job, about 3 jobs in between there, 3 permanent jobs. But I needed, when I realized I needed to care for him, I was now living on my own fully, and I needed to care. Remember, at this point, my family was still pretty much disappointed in how I had taken my life and the turn that I had taken. But I was determined that I was going to care for him in the best way I could. And I knew, but I was tired and depressed a lot. And that marked a lot of that period, trying to surface and still care for him, still work, still whatever. But when I came home and it was just us, I felt as though I was drowning because I'm a person who very systematic, very orderly, and he was not any of those things. He didn't follow timing or anything. We were so opposite. He was a child and he needed to move and play and what's not, but I couldn't move at his speed. I couldn't move and do things in the way he needed to be cared for because I didn't have that kind of time and energy to be on a pasture. This boy would throw a tantrum at 7 in the night when I went to pick him up to take him away from that pasture. He would want to, as dark as it was, he would want to continue playing out there. It's cold. And I'm pleading, Mom, we have to go home and get you something to eat. And my son would argue things like, bring it back, bring it for me, leave me here. 3 or 4, 3 and 4 years old, he's saying, he's not scared of the dark. He's not scared of being alone or whatever. You go and bring back the food. And he used to try to rationalize things for me and give me orders. I remember, trying to teach him some life skills. He was about, 5 or 6. And saying, come, let's spread the bed. He says to me, that's what mummies do, not children. Children don't spread beds. And I'm like, this is the son that we've been spreading beds together for how long? And he had these thoughts in his head. And I always wonder, where does this child get these thoughts from? In the morning, we'd be trying to get a bath, something as simple or supposedly simple as getting a bath to get to work on time. He would say to me, I bathed last night. I am not bathing today, mommy. My mom, I'm not bathing today. You are not going to bathe me today because Christian bathed last night. And oh, did I have tolerance? Sometimes. I had to
Right.
learn lots of tolerance with this boy, lots of love and care and tolerance. And, a lot held me back from, as the old people would say, pitching and slapping him. I remember my mother would, she thought that the way that I disciplined him was the wrong way to discipline. I needed to beat him more. I needed to beat him more. But beating was not for this child. It didn't,
Right.
it wasn't for
So,
this particular child.
so how was your relationship with God now that you have a child like with this issue?
Disposition.
Yeah.
I needed to pray more. I remember even as, him small, I knew that I needed to grow and develop and expand my understanding because I had this plan for him and this, life for him, but it wasn't going to plan. And I'm like, Lord, what is that? How and there wasn't persons to talk about. I would tell you I spent a lot of money in counseling. We went to private, we went public, we went to pastors, etc. And nothing seemed, excuse me, to be working for us, for us to come to any kind of understanding, me understanding more how to deal with him. And he graduated with these behaviors. I had an understanding of ADHD itself, but how to help us, I didn't. And I remember this is what pushed me now into studying social work because I thought I needed to find ways of my own, learn how to help him. And I studied while they were, I'm saying they because by the time he was about 4 years old, I had a daughter. She's now 14 years old. And I needed to study because I am telling myself and my children, you need to go to school and you need to work hard, you need to, achieve, etc. And I felt as though I wasn't achieving because remember, I had sort of hung up my life. I wasn't socializing, I wasn't doing much. It was just us. I had determined that I'm going to put all my time into these children to make them the best that they can be because again, here was a what I call a very single parent, and it took a lot of praying, a lot of depression, a lot of querying God, and it took a lot of God, the wisdom from the Holy Spirit to be able to do things because we were becoming financially depleted at this time, spending a lot of money either on things that he did and caused us to have. I remember he um disrupt the collarbone of another child. He jumped on him in his plane and he was very rough and he jumped on this child and dislocated the collarbone. And I'm telling you, when I say that a lot of persons who we were friends with before, we weren't friends with anymore because of this situation. It's not I'm not thinking that people didn't care for us anymore. It's just that it was sort of a liability, you know, to have a child with that much energy and very little what exhibited to be very little self-control, and there is not much that I can do in the way of holding him back or talking to him. I would tell you we would be driving and I want to go to this event or whatever. I didn't go to anything that my children couldn't go to, and there were a lot of things that would be happening around me. I would want to go, yes, and I already made up my mind, or I will hear from somebody about how it went because I have the children and I was not in the practice and didn't really have anyone who can, because we lived far away. We live in St. Philip. Everybody lived in St. Michael. So we didn't have anyone to really leave the children with, and I really didn't want to do that because of him. And then someone else having to deal with his behavior. And I would, if I'm going somewhere, I'll have them in the car and I'll be talking to them. I'll be saying, here is where we are going. Here's what we're going to do. If you want something, and manners, people did say they were both very mannerly and respectful, but the behavior again. Remember, we would go, I didn't have tantrums in the supermarket somehow. If my son wanted something, and I would say to them, whether it was what we call a want day or don't want day. Want days was when I knew I had money and I could get you an extra item or the item that you want. A don't want day, and I would be forceful about it. We're going to the supermarket, but please don't want anything because we don't have money. And you'll hear my children saying, but you can get money from the supermarket people, because they saw, the persons give us back change. Or in the gas station, they'll give us back change. And they thought that's how we made money in their little minds. And I like that they both did not throw tantrums for anything. He didn't throw tantrums to have things or whatever. And he would say, if you, this is how you knew he wanted something. In the car, he would say, Mom, can I want this, or can I want this today? Or Mom, you don't have money, do you? You don't have money. And I would know he want, and I would say, Christian, what do you want? And usually it would be something for somebody else at school, a friend at school. He's very altruistic, very caring and thoughtful and loving in that way. But it was just the behavior that hindered everything. We'd go to the supermarket and he would say, it's another way you knew he wanted something. Hey, that's nice. That's nice. And you knew that those are the things that he wanted. And I can say, have one, and put it in the trolley. And they waited until they got whatever. They were usually very, but then when he got into these moods, he would pick at his sister and,
Yeah,
I would tell.
I can attest. Alicia's children are wonderful, and they have
Thank you.
manners. And from a small child, they always exude manners, and I always admire that, because there are a lot of children, young children, that will make you turn your head. And if you got person in a conversation, you will never knew that he had
Yeah,
a behavioral problem, because
it is true.
taught mannerly, and the daughter too. So it was a pleasure talking with your children, because that shows you the type of home too that they came from. Because your diagnosis do not make you. It's
It's
home,
true.
it's your home life and the environment that make you. So you can be proud, because your children were a pleasure to interact with.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
I am
welcome.
pleased to hear that. I remember he I went to their school. They were transferred to a new school, and I went to the school to collect them. And one of the vendors said, "These are your children." Oh, they were late. I was late collecting them, and partly she would usually come after the time that I collected the children. But this particular day, she would have been there, and she said, "These are your children." I think she was packing up to go. "These are your children?" She said to me, "These are the most mannerly children," and I felt so good. I remember there was a teacher who would say that the teachers would be in conversation. You would look around, and there's this little boy, just standing here, waiting to talk to one of the teachers. But then years after, he started to exhibit the behaviors of ADHD. It was not all the time, but we could never figure out what triggered um, the behaviors
Yeah.
when he got up out of class and walked away. Sometimes they would tell me, and nobody could get him to settle back down. When you did get him settled, if you got him settled initially, he would right. Then he was diagnosed with something called dysgraphia. And I think that affected, because he couldn't do things as fast as the other children and write, and he could not understand. Even after he wrote, he could not understand, and he lost a lot of his confidence out of that. And no matter the therapy and what's not, it came from here. Whatever was happening here is what was causing him to feel badly about himself, because we aren't telling him he's horrible. We aren't telling him any of these things. But I can tell you, though, I may have contributed in that I pushed him a lot. I tried pushing him because I knew he had great potential. He can do, but I think one of the things that I probably, looking back, should have exhibited more is patience with him. Patience, to help him through the situation and understand. There were some other things that happened that we know um, later now were the things that triggered his feeling, even the feelings of abandonment, and we can understand how feeling of abandonment with a child, with a parent who cared, who was on time. They were, even though I said I was late that day, I was later than usual, but I was not late because I picked them up as soon as school finished. I was there to take them to my office so that they're there with me. So I took lunch at 3 or 3:30 so that I'm taking them up and taking them. So persons can tell you they're never the children who are left at school very late or abandoned or coming to school late or coming to school without being fed or anything. And I thought I was doing as a parent the all that I needed to do to care for them. But then for him, it was this sense of abandonment and that he was not cared for. And that sort of affected him throughout life. That affected him even to now. And I remember it would have been about 2016. Um, we were still not back at church yet, but they were going to church with my sister and brother-in-law. And I remember I was doing a youth development program, a youth leadership program at an Anglican church. So I was invited to the church on Sunday, and so that I can watch the children also who are in the program and help them along the program. My children will come with me. And I remember going into that yard and my daughter saying to me, "Hey, you're going to the wrong church," because now she's Seventh-day Adventist. She considers herself Seventh-day Adventist. My son, he considered, and we were having a conversation, and he's saying, "I like this church, but I like Auntie Natalie Church better. I prefer. So I can't go to both churches." And that's how he spoke to me. He says, "Mommy, I can't go to both churches." And it's with that time, around that time, that I determined that I was not going to take them to church with me anymore while I'm going to this church because it was close by. I was going to let them be fully immersed in Seventh-day Adventism with my brother-in-law and sister. And but I still hadn't gone to church as yet. But they'll invite me to VBS and different programs, etc. It was years after things had happened. We had to move from our house because of our financial situation, and we had to go live with a relative. And I call that a dungeon year. My daughter and I jokingly labeled it a dungeon year. It was a year where we spent a lot of time on the sidewalk, a lot of time in the rain, a lot of time outside of the house. But that was the year where I determined that I was going to make a change in my life. That would have been about 2018. And that was the time I started reading the Bible from front to cover, from cover to cover, front to back, Genesis to Revelation, thoroughly. And I started a little devotion for my daughter and myself to pass the time. Coming out of that year, though, the end of that year, I'd signed up to be the attendant to the Ambassadors for Christ Church. So I spent that whole year with those young people, preparing them for speeches, preparing them for community work. We did a lot of community work. We did a lot of self-development. And the attendance job is, while you're preparing them for these things, making sure that they get to events on time, that they are following protocol in terms of their dress, that they follow protocol in terms of how they move and operate in the function, in the event or the function. So it was a lot of guiding the ambassadors and supporting them and stuff. But my two ambassadors, very, very intelligent young people, Samantha Daniel and Raphael Marshall, they were like colleagues. We had conversations. They determine this might be the best way to do this or no, and they had the autonomy and but with very great respect to say, I don't agree, let's do it this way, or I prefer it this way, within the parameters of and the sphere that they can, because there were very strict guidelines to follow in the program. But we got through. They came third in speeches, and I was the second place attendant. That was a wonderful and tremendous life changing experience back in 2019. Come forward from 2019, um, quite early, the coronavirus, COVID-19 came in. So we were working from home, and this is where most of the change happened for me and for my children, my household. To keep up my exercise routine, I went to the beach, and in attending the beach, I met Seventh-day Adventist, somebody I didn't know. I knew his brother, but I always thought that his brother was an only child. I just took it for granted. I didn't know that he had siblings. And I was introduced to this guy, Chris. And Chris said to me, I was telling him I want to get back to church, but I don't know where to go. He said, well, come up to my church. This was the Good News Community Church. Come up to my church. And I didn't get to go at the time, but he sent me links that I can participate in Sabbath School, AY, and here it was, some old faces, persons that I know in these programs and interacting and stuff. It was like old times, having the discussions that I totally enjoy in Sabbath School that allow you to grow personally as a person. And coming out of that, then I don't know if you knew of this popular evangelistic series going on at the time around 2021 by Pastor Gleno Samuels out of Jamaica Conference. And I would listen to these every night. At this time, I was doing some counseling, but I decided that I've done that, I've helped those persons, it's going to be about me. So as that was coming to an end, I did not seek a renewal of the contract. I thought, well, I'm going to go forward in this. Every night, as Glenn O. Samuels preached, he'd be saying to me, Alicia, it's almost as though he's speaking to me, get back to God. Get back to your position in God, with God. Get baptized. Do not let life pass you by. Do not come and die or whatever, and you are not covered. And every night he's talking to me, and every night I want to be there to listen. And there are times there, Thursday night or whatever, he may not be doing live. I'm going back and watching on from before. And
Yeah.
I remember,
Yeah, it was like he was talking to me too, to push to do their show.
get
Yeah,
right with
because he
God,
was always pushing you to do something. So I was like, yeah, I can start this show. But no, I
yes,
did not start
yes.
it.
He's always,
But
it was always the
yeah, but
encouragement.
yeah, what I would say that's a ministry that he have. He is a real encourager. And
Yes,
yeah, that's what,
yes.
yeah, I
He
gleaned
got
from
to
his
me. He got
message.
through to me. I can tell you.
Yeah, yeah,
And I remember saying, yes, you know what? I got to, my life ain't where it ought to be. I got to get back. And I can go back and tell you, there are times I rationalize, I don't need to be in the church. I don't need it. I don't, But Chris, I remember I asked Chris when I went back to the beach, are you guys baptizing? Is there anybody baptizing? He didn't know of anybody baptizing. And this is how God works. God is awesome. He wants every one of us. And what it is where say he has a plan for each and every one of us. And if we allow him, he's going to carry out that plan. Now, here working from home, I heard some work being done, and I heard what I thought was some familiar voices where the work was being done at the apartment behind my apartment. I peeked out, and so true, those voices were for some persons who were familiar. And we got to talking and catching up because they're Seventh-day Adventists, and we got catching up. We knew each other, and the brother said, "We have a crusade going on. We have a crusade going on right now, so I have to finish up here so that I can go and set up for the crusade." And one of the other persons with him was one of the sisters who was attending the crusade. It was for, I think, elders or deacons and deaconesses, and I thought it was not for me. But then there was this urging coming from Pastor Samuel's. Now, yes, but on the inside of me saying, "Go, just go." And I knew, of course, Seventh-day Adventists are holding a crusade. There's going to be a baptism after. But now that it was going to be reality, I was here now taking a step back and wondering if I should go now and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I just determined one Thursday night, tomorrow by hook or crook, I'm going to find this crusade. It sounds like it is way behind God's back and in some kind of hickey, but I'm going to find somebody who can go with me for safety, and I'm going to go. Some of the persons I asked couldn't go. Short notice, you'd appreciate. But then I found one other friend, and she said, yes, if you can get for me, etc., we are going to go. And we went. And on the way, because this is in St. Thomas, I live in Christchurch. And on the way, we got to talking about how, yes, we are going to commit to God. We're not going to turn back. We are going to do all we can to follow God's and follow His way for our lives. And in her encouraging me, it strengthened me. And then it caused me to want to encourage her more and strengthen her. And we went along, and I can tell you, a year and some after, because I was baptized on the 19th of February 2022 into the Rock Hall SDA group. It's not full churches yet. We're growing, etc. I was baptized on the 19th. That's a full story there again of faith, because that day it nearly did not happen. It nearly did not happen. I remember sitting there. I signed up and everything for baptism the Friday, and I came prepared and dressed for baptism, my extra set of clothes, etc., for baptism on that day. And as fate would have it, I'm sitting there, church is nearly coming to an end, the sermon is coming to an end, and I get sick. My stomach is upset, and I'm becoming sweaty and clammy and feeling horrible. And at that moment, I said to the children, let's leave. Let's go quickly to Auntie Natalie's house. Now, she lives not far away from the tent, about 10 minutes away. Let's go to Auntie Natalie's house. And I'm on the way. The children come. They say something wrong. They don't know yet what's wrong, but we all bundle up and hustle out of church into the car, and we're going to my sister's house. And on the way, I'm sweating and I'm trying to drive, and I am just in excruciating pain. And where did this come from? What's happening? And my
We know
children are
that where that
afraid.
came from. We know where that
Yes.
came from. The devil. He didn't
Oh
want you
yes.
to
Oh
be
yes.
in
And
the kingdom.
when that crossed my mind, when it came across my mind, even in the midst, I was saying, I have to do this. I have to really do this today. This is telling me that if I do not go forward in faith, my life is gonna be the same. And that was the turning point, the catalyst. That was it for me and my children, because they were the ones saying, hold on, mommy, we're gonna get there. Come, mommy, we're gonna get there. And my son is trying to help me to drive, and my daughter, she's rubbing my back and encouraging me. When we get there, I go to the bathroom. I just, I took a shower, cold shower, felt relief, got the relief that I needed, and I felt calmer. And I said to the children, I think we have time to get back. So it's fresher now, etc. My children are saying, yes, mommy. You have to do it, because on the way I'm telling them, this is the enemy. Even though I cannot talk very well, I'm saying, this is the enemy, kids. This is the enemy here trying to not get me baptized today. And my children are in total agreement with me and encourage me. We're going to get through this. My son is saying, we're going to get through this. My daughter is saying, hold on, mommy, let's go. To get to my sister's house, get relief, even get something to eat. And my sister and my mother are there with her husband. And my sister said, well, since you are here, we are going to go to the baptism with you. So instead of just myself and my children witnessing the baptism, my mother is there and my sister is also there witnessing. So we had a bonus. We got to witness to my children. We got to strengthen me in my faith in that moment that this is it. It can't be anything else. I am
Yeah.
going forward. I'm not looking back, and he's not going to get me again in this way. I have to do this. We had more family members at my baptism. Doesn't end there,
Amen. That
Rochelle.
was
That I
beautiful.
got baptized. I think the pastor had to duck me twice because it didn't happen well the first time. So you can hear there's a video, and my somebody in the background is saying, "Look, she got baptized twice, but God did what He needed to do that day."
Yeah.
Baptism is finished, and we go back to the car. I change now to leave, and the car would not start. He's
Mm.
thinking that he must hit at me. And when you see the enemy hitting at you, know that you are doing God's will. Know
Yes.
that you're doing. Before, I did not recognize it. I did not recognize in that moment, in those moments where God was looking to do something through me, looking to change my life or whatever. I looked at only what the enemy was doing. I didn't look at what God can possibly be wanting to do in my life and say to Him, your will be done. But here it was now several years after. I'm saying, no matter what, your will be done. And that day, as listen, I saw family, Rochelle. I saw family. Everybody stayed around me to call this person, to call whoever they can call to get this car fixed. And one of the pastors there, Pastor Carl Dial, said, sis, I'm gonna come and line up here, and somebody I think had spark plugs or himself, and they got it started. And he, Pastor Dial, stayed. I think he had to be someplace, going to someplace else, but he stayed until I was up and ready to be able to leave that site that day. And I thank him and I thank God. He said what he said to me, that easy, something like that. One of the young people slogans, that easy, sis.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I in that moment I saw family, I saw tribe. These were my people who stayed, and nobody was like, like, how you don't know how to fix your car or whatever.
Yeah.
Nobody was condemning or whatever. You didn't put water in your car, you didn't put gas in the car. The car was full of gas. There was nothing like that. Everybody just wanted to see this car started and get going. And there were even persons who voiced what it was. It was the enemy. And the enemy,
Yeah.
he believe he has to do what he has to do. But I tell you, we have to do what we have to do and allow God to do his will through us. If not, the enemy will win. And he was winning
Yeah.
for too long in my life. And I was determined that he was not going to win in my life or anybody's life who I am called to minister to. And that's where we
Yes.
are. That's where we are today.
And we praise the Lord that the Lord never left you. He
No.
was just there at the back of you, tapping on
Yes.
your shoulder all the
Yes.
time. But that day he
But that's not the
showed
voice I was
his
listening to.
yeah, he showed out that day from
Yes.
you knowing where your sickness came from, sudden sickness, to your care not working, to see and tell you the love is still there for you with your family
Yes.
and the pastor.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now we are going to go into what do Alicia do now after the Lord has been the leader of your life, and He will be continue being the leader of your life. So what do Alicia do right now in the vineyard and to pro- proclaim the Lord's message?
I think I'm in a most exciting time of my life. I get to do what I want to do. You remember some years ago when I was a teenager, eons ago, I wanted to get into broadcasting. I didn't tell you that I actually did a course. I have the certificate here. Uh,
Push it close, right there.
College of International Radio and Broadcasting. This certificate is a diploma that I completed in the course in International Radio and Television Announcing and Mass Communication Development with a distinction. And I did that in 2018, incidentally, in my, remember our dungeon year? I completed that in my dungeon year in 2018. A friend, a workmate of mine, her husband had done it. And she said, Alicia, this is something I can see you doing. And I went and did that course and got back that. But coming up to now, somehow I could not find the certificate. I had about three opportunities where a person said to me, um, use your certificate and your training and going to broadcasting. You can do ads, you can do whatever. And I could not find the certificate. I remember going to see recently the director of a television, a private television and radio studio, and I didn't have the certificate, and there was nothing that I had even in a portfolio to show that I had done in radio, television, etc. So earlier this year, one of our elders, we are holding at the Rock Hall Assembly Adventist group a host of evangelistic series. It's a new group, as I said, in the community, and we want to impact the community of Rock Hall and surrounding, and really be, as our name says, a community church. So to the end of that, we are hosting and we go into the community, see what needs are, etc. We can fill. Right now, we're looking at doing some community classes with persons who and find out what their needs are in terms of those areas and some development, so that we can facilitate. Our pastor is Pastor Winston Cook, and he's very community minded and oriented. So one of the elders said that they want to train women to do open air and evangelistic meetings. And I'm like, I've not done a sermon. I've not done a speech since Toastmasters in 2016. I've not done a sermon. And to me, sermons were one of the hardest types of speeches to do. I've not done a sermon since I was a Pathfinder. How am I here now doing these speeches? And that sort of picked me up though, because I'm remembering and I'm reminding myself, you made a commitment. You made a commitment to do whatever God asks you to do. Now, if God gives you a gift of speech, you're going to use that, because you're telling everybody, use their gifts. This is something I used to get into trouble for as a child. My reporting of everything in the house, my my commentary. I used to do running commentary on television programs as a child, which used to totally annoy my mother, because my mother saying, I watched it or I am watching it. And I did running commentary of events I went to, not knowing that that is something that I can, do as an adult and do a running commentary for others. But anyhow, I pulled out after what led up to that, led out of that, what pursued that was I had started blogging, writing a blog at Lifelinks Daily. Let me go back. I had started writing quotes over the years and just putting them aside, never using them for anything. I put some on Facebook occasionally, but they were just there in books and papers, etc. As they came to me, I just wrote them. So then I thought about turning those into a blog, and I pulled some other blogs I had together and created this one blog called Life Links Daily. After that, when the elder brought up the idea of the sermon, I thought, let me look at one of these and see if I can use anything here, or a book that I had started writing, if I can use that. I couldn't, but I went along in January this year to publish that book. Come Let's Worship and Bow Down. That's the name of the book, and it's on Kindle right now. But coming out of the blog, I thought I'll do the sermon, try to look for a sermon so that if they ask me, I had something ready. I love to be prepared, have something ready. And I beefed up the blogs, and I actually started after that to publish them, to publish the blog. Coming out of that, I remember sending it to a friend who said to me, Alicia, I am not going to read all of that. I read the first one, it was good, but I'm not going to read that. Um, Let me see it in a video. If you put it in a video, I would listen to it, but I'm not going to read it. And it showed me that everybody is not going to appreciate one form of media or one form of content. The other persons who prefer other things. And that's how I got into trying to turn the blog into videos. But that was a little ticklish with the fact that I was using only my phone, because now I don't have a laptop to be able to continue. So everything I do on my phone. But then after that, the idea of the podcast came up, and I thank you, Rochelle, so much for guiding me through that process to where I am now, where there's not only a Lifelinks Daily blog, there's a Lifelinks Daily YouTube channel, and there's also a Lifelinks Daily podcast, and I thank you, where I've
Yes,
shared my story.
yes, I will leave all of Alicia's social platforms in the description and on all podcast services show notes. So I
Appreciate
am
it so
very
much.
proud of her that she got to this point of making a podcast, and all of the stories, everything that she's sharing here, you will hear it on her podcast and many more. And whatever she's sharing is to help you and encourage you and inspire you. So I hope you will subscribe and follow her on her platform.
And I don't I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Rochelle. I want persons as they subscribe and follow to also see how their own story, telling their story about their journey, etc. But the aim of the podcast is to talk about our purpose and work through because a lot of persons believe that they don't have gifts, that they don't have talents, that they don't have anything special to share. And I want for us to know that we do by listening to other person's stories and telling our own stories, that there is something to share and we all have a ministry. Now, think of it, if I didn't come to this point where I was a little fearful of delivering a sermon. Now, I may not be able to deliver a sermon in the same great way that my pastors or my elders may, but I'm hoping that I deliver sermons, I deliver hope and guidance, etc., while doing my podcast or the YouTube channel or the blogs. And that's just to show where you are at and what you have in you and what God has placed in you. He is going to help you to be able to use that thing to help you yourself tell your story, improve your life, and improve the life of others. And I hope that as I come to the end of this discourse, that is what persons capture from here, that you are encouraged to tell your story, to live your purpose, and to help others.
Did you hear that? Food for thought, right? So, Alicia, the last question. What legacy do you want to leave for your family and the world?
Well, I hope that I can leave a legacy, um, love and care, encourage. I want to encourage other people to care for yourself. That's important, and care for others. I want that my children can find what the purpose that God has placed in them and use whatever that is. And when they come to fully understand, and don't think that it's just one thing, because I had many interests. My daughter has several interests that she can use whatever it is and everything that God has put in your way. And I hope that they remember that Alicia Moses said that.
Yeah. Well, you have heard a bit of Alicia's story to God, how she knew that she needed him back in her life, and she found him, understand him, and accept him in her life and her children's life. So till we meet again next time, be bold, be brave, and know that you can take your step to lead. Be blessed.
My